Hi, everyone. We are going to go ahead and kick things off. I know we're still waiting on some people to kind of start trickling in, but we've got a lot of things to cover today. So we figured we would go ahead and get started. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today to talk about getting the most out of your new C360. So let's just go ahead and jump right into some housekeeping. First of all, we are recording this, so keep that in mind. We're going to pass this on after the webinar today, so know that that's coming. And also a little bit different approach today. Save your questions. So Lisa's on and is going to be monitoring the chat, but all of those questions we're going to address in our office hours. So directly after this presentation and at the very end, we're going to give you a link to actually register for those office hours on February 7th and February 9th. And you can come and get your questions and use cases and talk through those live on that session. All right, so that leads us to who are these ladies leading this session. I did see a few familiar names on here, but my name is Grace Tester. I'm sure Kate is tired of hearing this joke, but yes, that is my real name. I'm sure there are a couple of you that got the invitation and thought there might have been a typo on the webinar description. I am based in Raleigh, North Carolina. A little bit about me, I, over the past 12 years, have been a CSM. I've dabbled in customer marketing, worked in customer success and experience operations. And about 3 years ago, I moved over to do customer success consulting and business development at InCloud Integrators. I'll share a little bit more about our company here in just a second, but Kate, would you like to take a moment and introduce yourself to the group?
I sure would. Thanks, Grace. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar today. My name is Kate Griffin, and I am the Director and Practice Lead in Cloud Integrators. I am located in Buffalo, New York, and some fun facts about Buffalo, known for, of course, our chicken wings, for lots of snow, and of course, the Buffalo Bills. My background in tech is actually very similar path to Grace. So over 10 years experience in customer success, holding roles such as a CSM, an operations lead, as well as a director of customer success. And with those experiences, specifically as a director of CS, I've experienced firsthand what a game changer Gainsight can be on having a team move from being reactive to proactive. And I enjoyed that work so much that I decided to come over and be able to consult with organizations across our industry. And in my current role, that's really the honor and opportunity that I have, is being able to consult with customers and how best to leverage Gainsight to meet their desired outcomes, as well as be able to consult on customer success strategy development. So we have lots of knowledge and expertise and strategies to share with you today, and excited to run through it with you all. Thanks for joining us.
All right, thank you, Kate. As promised, I wanted to share a little bit about InCloud Integrators. Once again, I kind of looked over the attendee list, and it was so cool to see so many folks that I've worked with, and I know Kate has worked with, and we've partnered with here at InCloud. But for those of you that may not have been introduced to us before, we have been a preferred implementation partner of Gainsight since 2018. Since then, we've led over 600 projects, everything from implementations and technical administration to strategic consultative engagements. Fun fact, we have one of the largest ecosystems of Gainsight certified admins outside of Gainsight, of course, and have built our methodology around aligning our customers' business outcomes and strategy with the tooling, automation, and process improvement. So this is just a little bit about us here at InCloud Integrators. So what are we covering today? We are going to jump right in the next hour. We're going to go through some of what we thought were the most important and exciting enhancements of that C360. So we wanted to highlight some of those, and just like we do with a lot of things, we made a pros and cons list and talked through what that rolling out a new C360 looks like internally. So we want to talk through that, and then ensuring that your layouts and those views are meaningful, and then making sure that we continuously improve. Kate's going to share a little bit about SWOT and PDSA and using those strategies. And then at the very end, Kate's going to jump in and give a live demo on the C360 and setting up some of these layouts that we talk about. All right, so I know that some of you may be familiar with this slide. For those of you that have been meeting with your Gainsight CSM or have recently been through an implementation, this is simply a slide that just highlights the top CS factors or common business outcomes that we see with a lot of the CS teams we work with. The reason I wanted to go back to this slide is that having worked on as many implementations as we have, probably 90% of them, visibility is one of the first things that comes up when we start talking about this. Visibility, we need a holistic view of our customer. We need our teams to be able to see their customers in an efficient manner. What's going on with their health? Who's working with them? How have they been engaged with us? When are they renewing? So really all those W and H questions that we start off with, a who, what, when, where. And I know if we sat here and talked through all of these, we could probably tie each one of these columns to the new C360 enhancements and how we can tie those outcomes to that. But specifically over the next 60 minutes, I really want to make sure that we're thinking about that visibility. All right, so let's talk about the new C360. Kate and I have been internally saying the new horizonized view. I know it's not a word, but if we say it offhand, we've made a verb out of it. But with any presentation, we do want to talk, we want to make sure that we understand our audience and we know who's here. And I know that there are probably a few of you out there that are very new to Gainsight. So we wanted to make sure that we talk through some of the basics of what is a C360. It's that customer's business, that hub for your customer's business information, so your account page. We're going to be talking through that these enhancements that are not only viewed at the company level or that overarching parent level, but also at the relationship level. For those of you that may not know what relationships are, this is actually a feature inside of Gainsight called Business Modeler. It allows you to visualize your customer in multiple relationships, products, teams, etc. So it just takes, what we're going to be doing today, we're going to focus at the higher level, at the company level, but know that these enhancements are available at the relationship level as well. Admins can create a maximum of 50 C360 layouts. I know this is a ton, but we wanted to throw out some just hard facts there of what you'll know for the admins on the call, and 10 R360 layouts per relationship. And then the ability to assign layouts to users and accounts using filters. So Kate's gonna actually go through a demonstration of how to do that, how you can create those filters. One housekeeping item that we didn't really talk about, but in this GoToWebinar, you do have the ability to, you have a handout there. It is the PDF of this slide deck. We're going to present this or send this to you after as well, but we wanted you to have this, and I've actually linked this support doc page to the deck itself, or to that PDF. So when you download that, you'll have a clickable link to go in and see this page. Gainsight support did a great job at putting together, I think, this page and walking you through, both from the admin and the end user perspective, what these enhancements look like. So I know we probably would have a mix of folks on the call today, and so I'm actually going to spend the next few slides talking about these enhancements from that perspective, both the admins and then for the end users as well. All right, so what's new at a glance? First off, you can see it's just got a much sleeker view. Some of you may be used to this view or that horizon UI with the reporting, but right off the bat, you can see that the tabs now that used to be along the side are horizontally or horizon across the top. There's a quick action button for creating CTAs and timelines. This one actually I got really excited about, because without having to click into the different sections of Cockpit or of your timeline, you can go in and create with one click those entries for your customer. Visually displaying your key customer milestones. So I know that there's probably some people clapping here. This is one of my favorites. I think this is the chef's kiss moment, I think, for this page, because it allows you to not only see your customer holistically when they became a customer, but also tying in those key milestones, what stage they're in, maybe outlining some risk with those milestones as well. It does allow you to analyze your trends, so not only seeing what it was or what it is, but what it was in the history of that with your widgets. With your widgets, before when you were creating your C360 layout, you had to make some decisions, some design choices about what you wanted your end users to see for you admins on the call, right? So you had to have the ability to only pick 6. So now with the new enhancements, you'd actually have the ability to do more than that. You can actually double that. Kate, can you, I think we may have lost presenter. Can you turn that back on for me?
Got it.
Okay, there it is. All right. So the last 5 timeline entries, this is just a widget that you can actually drop on that summary page just to see at a glance what those last touch points were, and viewing data from the company object. This is not a brand new thing, right? You've been able to put attributes on your C360 from the very beginning. But the cool thing that you have now in addition to the widgets is you have the ability to actually group these. You can go in and group these different attributes from the company object into ways that make sense for your end users and for your specific use cases. So let's dig in. Let's talk about end users. So for the CSMs, for the account managers, for the end users on the call, some of the things that I wanted to highlight that are now available for you, the ability to go in and actually edit in your people section. So you can go really quickly and update the name, update the title, mark whether they're a decision maker, checkbox on whether they're an advocate or not. So it's a really quick and easy way to be more efficient with that. With your C360 view at the top. So as an admin, you're going to go in and create layouts, right? So you're going to say, here's what we want the sections to be for this layout. But for your end users, you know, everybody's got a different way that they work. One person might look at something first before as opposed to another. So as a CSM, as an end user, you have the ability to go in and actually pin different tabs at the top. And not only pin the different tabs at the top, but with the customer journey as well. So for that visual, if you only wanted to see certain key dates or certain manual milestones, and Kate's going to share some of those later on, you have the ability to edit that and tweak that view for yourself as well. This one is, it might seem like a small one, but you do have the ability to go in and add in a custom logo. I really love this. I'm a very visual person. I love things to be pretty and tied together. And we're gonna highlight some of those visual design choices. But giving the end users the ability to add in a simple logo for their customer, I think that it's a small win, but it's just a really great way to pull that whole page together. All right, so we've talked about the overview. So a lot of the first things we talked about were admin or for the end user. And now we've talked about some of those end user sections. Let's talk about for the admin. When you are creating layouts now, you have the ability to select a record to preview those layouts. So if you wanted to use a specific customer that you know has great data that will then fall in alignment with what this layout really needs to highlight, you can then view that. I wanted to highlight this one because this one is very cool. This is the ability to actually allow end users to preview the new layout. This is for you folks on the phone that may not have actually switched over to the new C360 layout yet, right? So the horizon view. You have the ability as you're going through and creating these to turn on that little megaphone so that for your end users. So in the top right-hand corner, you can slowly roll this out to the team, right? It's great for getting that feedback that you want from your team to understand what's working and what's not as you have this new view. So they can actually not only just view that customer page, but you can turn that on for them to then work inside that new customer layout and tell you what they like, what they don't like, and what edits you can make moving forward. I know that that there are people on this call that this is going to hit home. It hit home for me because I remember going in and building out multiple layouts and assigning those layouts and then having to go and rebuild that layout. If I didn't want to clone the whole layout itself, I just wanted that one section. There's now the ability to do that. You have the ability to build out a specific section and use that across multiple layouts and multiple canvases. Kate's going to walk through that. And the cool thing about that is you even have the ability to say, okay, I want that any layout that's using this pre-built section, I want to go in and update that. And then that will then update all of my layouts from there. I think that that is a really great, it's just a time saver. And you're thinking about having to, when you create new content or you create new layouts, you got to think about the long term of actually keeping it up, right? So that's a really cool one that you can do. It makes you a little more efficient. So Gainsight's actually taken a lot of the guesswork out and provided templates for what is best practice around CSM and executive layouts. So when you go in to actually start creating your own, you do have the ability to go in and use what's already provided for you. Just like when you go into your environment now, there are playbooks that you can just go in and tweak and make your own, or you've got Sightline Vault where you can go in and download different assets. This is something that Gainsight's provided to not only for the CSM, but also for that executive layout, right? So for the CSM, it's really focused on what are my actions? What am I actioning on? What do I need to see that can, help me as a CSM to do my job and to be more efficient? And then for the executive, at a glance, I need to know where they are, what's their health, what I'm about to get on a call with them, and I want to make sure that I understand that. So 2 different views to start with. These are editable, so know that you can start with this and work from it and clone and make your own as well. All right, so just with anything in general, I am a huge fan of pros and cons, making a pros and cons list, right? So the cons we've listed here really fall more into opportunities, just the places that you're going to want to spend some more time and energy. So what I mean when I say that is, in talking to our customers in the past, one of the things that we hear the most is the challenge of change management, right? So while there are a lot of things that we've talked about as far as enhancements and things that you can just turn on, this whole thing is not something that you're just going to want to go turn on. For it to be a valuable and beneficial rollout for your team, you're going to need to do the collecting feedback, documenting those internal processes, providing training and transparency into that process. It's just a place that can be challenging, and you'll want to ensure that you take the time to that's as smooth as a transition as possible. I think the other con or challenge or whatever opportunity you want to call it here is information overload. So when you start digging into, oh, these are really cool widgets, this is a really nice layout, I really love this, you may just start the I want it all syndrome, right? I want all of that, I need all of that. So what I wanted to call out here is that you will need to be really intentional when you're starting to think about these layouts and the new enhancements and how the team is perceiving that. So just making sure that, just like if you launched a new CTA to your CSMs, you don't want it to be something that's harder to manage than the previous process. So you want to try and highlight the benefit of it. From a pros perspective, I think that it's all of these we've talked about are the big neon signs that we've been covering, right? The flexibility, so you can customize, you can personalize. All of those customizations and personalizations actually make it more efficient for your end user, but even thinking about the admin, right? Like it's more efficient from an admin perspective as well. Giving the ability to create unique layouts for assignment, not just at the overarching account level, but also at those at the lower level there. So like a segment, right? So at the account level, you can segment it, you can do it by user. So just kind of thinking about the ways that you can launch that to the team from a layout perspective. All of these things put together and thinking about the different sections you can put on there, really letting you be more data-driven and focused, right? Letting the data do the talking, letting those widgets and reports and sections really do a lot of the talking there. And then all of that leading to those usability improvements. So let's talk about something that might need improvement. I think Kate had a really good time when we were creating content for this. We were talking about what would be a really great design, what might need a little improvement. We don't want to say bad, it's just here's something that might need a little improvement. So we'll start with the one where there's some opportunity for improvement. And the first thing that if we look at a whole, we might even think, oh, this isn't bad. But at the top, you're missing descriptive sections and tabs. So for instance, it says reports or attributes. We need more information. Your end user is going to need more information. Seems like common sense, but when you are getting in there and starting to create these sections and this content, it's something that can quickly be overlooked. Missing or empty data and widgets. This is a pet peeve of mine. I hate clicking on something and looking at it and seeing that there's no data available, because then it makes me question, like, is there no data available because it's wrong? Is there no data available because there's actually no data? So it just can lead to a lot more questions. And so you just want to be mindful about what widgets you're putting and what will actually have data in it. Balance. So we're going to talk about visual design and the balance of a page and where your eyes go. And if you are looking at this page, you might start with the health score, but then you're quickly going to go to the bottom right because it is the largest section on here. It is open white space. So if there's no action there, it's just not a great experience. The clear action for your CSM. This one, you want to make sure that if you put something on a page, what is the action item for your end user, right? If it's just knowledge that you need to know, that's great, but you want to make sure you're tying it to those actionable things. So overall, there's no overarching direction or view into the customer here, right? It's just a bunch of little random, what feels like pieces of information, missing data. So let's flip that switch. What does it look like to be best in show? All right, so I wanted to show this little GIF first so you could see. You might have to scroll a little bit. You don't want to have to scroll too far when you're talking about a best practice, but that's okay if we're providing value right there at the top. So you'll notice first things first at the top again, clear, concise, and descriptive groupings and tabs, right? Then we've got actionable information for the CSM. I put 2 highlights here because if you take one widget and pair it with another widget, you now have an action item, right? Like, oh, my last QBR date was here and I haven't talked to them to schedule the next one. The same goes for balancing out the whole page, right? So you've got now a good flow. We've got my favorite customer journey across the top that's giving good information. It's colorful. You know who you're looking at. It's a great balance and layout to the page. Secondly, I wanted to talk about additional context. So for instance, we've got our score there. Some might be like, well, why do we need to know anything more at a glance? Well, we all know that, as CSMs, a lot of times we're having those conversations and we would probably be the first one to know if something's going wrong with our customers. So at a glance, knowing that the CSM might be different from that overarching health score history, I think that's a good call out. So thinking about ways that you can actually pair data there to create actionable items. We've talked about where the customer is and what milestones have been achieved. And then, so all in all, that is kind of the best practice guidelines. So I think, Kate, I hit it right on time to give you enough time to go through your content.
Yes,
so I'm going to go ahead and flip it over to Kate.
Great. All right. Now that Grace has walked through all of the wonderful things, and there is so much in this release for the new C360 that there's no way we would be able to cover everything in an hour. So we are trying to pull out the best of the best, the things that we think are going to make you impactful for making the best decisions and creating your new Customer 360 or launching the new Customer 360. And the next section before we get into the demo is thinking about all of the options that you now have. How can you make a meaningful C360? Because the easy part is building one, dragging and dropping sections and adding fields. That's what's easy. But making something that is going to be meaningful to put in front of your team to ensure that they adopt, that they're using Gainsight and they find it something that's going to be meaningful for them to use, that is where we need to put a little bit more time and thought to how you're going to approach your strategy for designing it. Getting started with making a meaningful C360, my first point is going to be around identifying your goals. Thinking about your customer success strategy as a unit or as a team, what are you focused on and why? Are you focused on renewal? Are you focused on expansion? Are you focused on ensuring that you're hitting certain milestones? All of those goals can help you identify what you need to see, especially on that summary page. And so what I would empower you to think about is, what do you really need to have there? As Grace said, it's easy and it's cool to drag and drop some of those fancy new widgets that are there, but only put stuff that is going to be aligned or it's going to be meaningful for your team. So they're going to get the most impact right, of what's in front of them to make data-oriented decisions with their customers or data-oriented actions with their customers. Speaking of data, we also want to have alignment and we want to be data-driven. So we want to align our widgets to your goals. With that, we need to have the data. So as Grace pointed out in the layout that had opportunity for enhancements, we had some widgets that were missing data. If you pulled in the CSAT widget, but you are not collecting CSAT data in Gainsight yet, then don't add that to the layout, because what that is going to start is just questions is this just not accurate? Is it not working? Is this something that I'm supposed to look at? You want to look at your goals, look at the data that you have to align to those goals, and start there in building out your layout. Lastly, you want to collect feedback from your team. Probably the most important thing here is that you have your teams who are using Gainsight be a part of the building process. And when we talk about getting feedback from your team, this could be as simple as sending out a survey of what are the top five data points that you as a CSM use on a day-to-day basis or a weekly basis. What are the 5 top reports that you use and why? Being able to collect that information, aggregate and synthesize to say, here are the themes across the team of what they need or what they're using, and then using that and in addition to your goals as an organization and the data that you have, can really help you guide your framework in creating a meaningful customer 360. I want to talk to you a little bit about some frameworks that you could use for gathering feedback. If you have a really small CS team, simple survey or a meeting with your CS organization may do the trick to gather feedback. But maybe you have a bigger team or a team that you want to ensure that you want to organize the data that you gather, the feedback in a systematic way to be able to pull out those themes of what's working and what's not working. This end user feedback is going to be essential to your successful adoption of Gainsight, especially something like the C360. And using a framework to gather and aggregate the feedback is going to be helpful for you as somebody who's maybe leading the charge of how best to design this. I'm sure most of you are familiar with a SWOT analysis, and what I'm going to apply a SWOT to is this concept of getting feedback from your end users. When we think about the strengths in a SWOT analysis, this is where you'd want to understand or establish what's working currently today in your customer 360. Your weaknesses are going to address what isn't working. Tell me what isn't working. Your opportunities are going to be where we can identify those opportunities for improvement. And then threats is where we want to get this understanding, these insights from the team of maybe blockers that we just don't have awareness of. If you are the operations lead or you're the Gainsight admin, you may not see some of the things that the team is going to see, and you want to understand those or know if there's going to be any blockers to anything that we're going to try to move forward with. So we have a SWOT analysis here on this page, and what I've done is I've outlined some example questions that you could align with each of these categories to ask the team. When we think about strengths, you could ask questions to the team, either formally through a survey if you've got a bigger team, or again in a meeting or more of a one-on-one setting. But what are the strengths of the current C360 design? What's working? What data do you use on a daily or weekly basis? What is helping you be effective in your role in regards to what you see on that page? What's going to make you even more efficient than you were today? For weaknesses, we want to know simply what are from your perspective, what are the weaknesses of your current design? What do you dislike about what you see in the C360? What problems or challenges do you encounter on trying to use that as a way to inform your actions on a daily or a weekly basis? And what's hindering you from being efficient in your day-to-day? Opportunity questions could be, what are the opportunities for our design? What could strengthen what we already have? What opportunities do we have to align to new KPIs or goals? How do we engage other stakeholders? And are there other things you see out there from companies that you think we should be doing? Our CSMs are looking at all of the best practice in the industry as well. So they may have ideas of something they saw that we want to put on the table as an opportunity to strengthen what we already have. When we think about threats, this is what can get in our way to establishing the things we want to achieve. So what's going to get in our way of achieving the outcomes we might want to have for a new 360? Or do we have any data blockers? And we all have data blockers. We could do a whole webinar on data blockers. But is there anything that we see as an opportunity, but we're going to have a threat because there's something in our way to allowing us to achieve that item? I went through and put on my CSM hat and I answered all of these questions just so you could get an understanding of what do we think feedback would be, or what would we expect feedback to be formatted as. You can use this if you say, hey, I'm going to go out, I'm going to do this strategy with my team to collect feedback, and I want to give them an example of when you say this, what do you mean, right? There's always this interpretation that can happen on questions. And so I outlined this example for you, and I won't read through every bullet, but I'll pull out the examples that I've underlined. For strengths, they could say, the lifecycle map helps me visualize achievements and forward momentum with a customer, which means I really like that lifecycle and it helps me see what I need to do in the future, what the customer needs to do in the future. Weaknesses, we're missing support ticket data, and I would want to know if there's been any recent support escalations. So that's a weakness right now that I don't have that. When you think about the outcome of visibility and having that as a data point, we're missing that. Opportunities, there's a new goal around achievement of certain milestones on an account. I think we need to add a milestone data point. Maybe that wasn't something you were aware of or you just got wind of, and that, okay, here's an opportunity for us to strengthen because it's going to be a goal or a KPI alignment. And then threats, are all of our teams using the same source system? How often are the details in the C360 updated? Building trust on what they see there is the same as others could probably be a threat that you hear, probably Gainsight and the data that's in there in general, but that C360 is the main source for how they would go in and see a lot of the information. Grace talked about effective visual design. Once you have gathered feedback from your team, whether informally in one-on-one settings, you send a survey, you do a SWOT analysis, you get that feedback, you know what your goals are, so you have a plan or a structure to what you want to do and how you want to design it. How are you going to go to design it? And with this new layout, it's a blank canvas, literally is called a canvas, that you drag and drop these widgets onto. And it's important that you place these elements carefully to create an interface is going to optimize the user experience. And I'm reading that from this quote, which is from the Interaction Design Foundation, because this is really important when you go in and you put information on this page, is thinking about some visual design best practices. And we talk about those best practices. The practices to deploy are thinking about both hierarchy and balance. Hierarchy from the perspective of when I look at a page, my eye is going to go to what's biggest, what's first, and what's most colorful. If I align those to widgets that we have in the C360, I think of the lifecycle map. The health scorecard is a color. The NPS is a widget that has color in it. And you want to take those into consideration of, do you want them at the bottom? Probably not. You probably want them at the top. Their eye's going to go there first. But also, what's the information that's organized around it? You almost have to tell a story with it. You also want to bring balance. So you want to organize the content in a certain way with different types of data, with the same types of data, and you want a variety and consistency. So you do not want to have a C360 that is all widgets. You probably want to have a variation. You want to have some widgets, field widgets. You may want to have some visuals that have color. You may want to have some widgets that have text fields or even an open text field. Putting these into practice with this C360 design that we have, First, my eye is going to go to color on the page. So when I look at this page, the first thing I'm going to look at is that green 91. Great, and cloud is healthy. This is what the history of their health score is going to be. And maybe I also might look at that logo. As Grace said, we can add logos for the customer as well. So how I place that is a decision that I need to make to really make it impactful. I also am organizing the page so that there is balance. So we have widgets all at the top row, and then we have text fields at the bottom. And they're also balanced on the page. I do not have any open spaces. I don't have one that's really bigger than the other without balancing out what's on the canvas. So some things to consider when we go in and we actually create a layout. The other thing I want to talk about is how can you, once you've gathered the feedback, you know what you want to do, you even have this concept of how you're going to actually design the layout, you're ready to deploy it. How can you continuously improve what you have there? And this is a concept you can apply to not only this rollout of the new customer layout, but also to any release within Gainsight. PDSA is a systematic process for understanding your process and learning from what you've implemented, how you could improve it, and then implementing those changes into your plan again. It's a continuous improvement cycle. I have the source or reference at the bottom of this page to be able to click into it. But PDSA stands for Planned, Do, Steady, Act. You first will establish a plan. You'll establish your goals or your success factors. This is going to be what is the plan for what this C360 layout is going to look like? What are the different sections or tabs at the top? What does the design look like? And then you're going to do that. You're going to release that and put that plan into action. You're going to put it in front of your team. This is probably the most important part, and often the part that we as administrators will skip over is we want to know that what we put out there is working. So what were our intended outcomes of putting this out there? We wanted to have a meaningful C360 that had data the team was going to find was relevant and meaningful, and they could really start to be more data driven. Did that happen? Were we successful in achieving that? Or were there problems? Do we still have issues as a team not understanding the data that's there, or they feel like we're missing information? So you would do some sort of study on the release, and then whatever you learned, you'd want to implement into your plan. And thus you'd have this cycle of continuous improvement. Looking at both SWOT and PDSA together, you could use these just to strengthen your approach to moving over to this new Customer 360. And again, you could apply this to any new release or strategy that you have within your customer success team. SWOT being used to gather feedback and insights so you can establish a plan. PDSA used to implement your plan changes to ensure they're working and for you to make any necessary adjustments to ensure it is exactly what the team needs. They feel like they're being listened to and we're incorporating their feedback. All right, now to the good stuff. So I'm going to go into a demo. And in this demo, we're going to walk through building a new layout. We're going to walk through setting up those milestones, and I see there's some milestone questions in there. So I promise that I will run through that. We're going to actually assign layouts, and we're going to look at some of the preview options that you have. If we don't get to one of your questions, remember we've got those 2 1-hour open office hours. You can sign up and come ask your question. We'll be able to dig into your specific question if we miss it today. Hopefully you find that as a meaningful experience as well. So with that, I am going to pause my screen and I'm going to get over into a live demo environment. So this will not be screenshot based. We are actually going to be an environment. And this is a demo environment that we have it in cloud that we use to test new concepts, develop new processes, show our customers, some different strategies that they could deploy. And so that's what we're going to use for our demonstration today. The first thing I want to show is, and a change really with this release, is where you go to manage the C360 is different. In my admin bar on the left-hand side, I'm going to search for 360. And that is going to bring me to a new area in admin. Before you went to company, 360 layouts, relationships, 360 was kind of tucked into that space. Now they are in a 360 layout admin area. You will notice that you will be able to make these updates for both at the customer level and the relationship level, but you'll go into those two different subsections based on where you're making your layouts for. For the purpose of us having only an hour today and showing you what we have, I'm going to work within the customer 360, but I wanted to call that out that for those of you using Business Modeler, you could apply this to that as well. When we get into the C360, walking through what we see on this page, we have a list of all of our layouts showing me that I have 3. If you have quite a few layouts, you'll be able to search for it by name. So if this list is very long and you're quickly trying to find something to make an edit, you'll be able to search. We're going to get to this at the end, but this is where we'll go to manage assignments if we create a layout and we need to manage it over to a specific, an account to a specific assignment. The big blue button is where you'd go to create a new layout. And then we have our 3 layouts here for the examples that we have today. Grace noted this, that out of the box, every customer has a layout for a CSM layout and an executive layout. These are the Gainsight recommended layouts out of the box. You have these in your area. If you were migrated over to this and you now have 360, but you haven't converted yet, you'll be able to come in and see these and work off of these as you're deciding what you want to do for that release. Using that preview function that Grace had noted at the beginning of the presentation. So you have both of those that are the out-of-the-box templates. If we wanted to edit one of these, and I would encourage you to, if you don't know where to start, you've got some understanding, you're just getting started with what you want this layout to work off of or look like, work off of one of these recommended layouts. You can build and make changes from the layouts that are posted here. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go into the CSM layout. I'm going to use this as my foundation, and I'm going to come over to the 3 dots and go to view and edit. Once we are in this area, this is where we're going to configure our sections. The sections are the tabs that you see at the top. So sections are the summary, the timeline, cockpit, scorecard, and so forth. You have your available sections over here on the left-hand side, and I could search for a section. It would bring it up based on that keyword search. I also have those pre-built sections. So if I have pre-built a section for people and I want that people section to be used for all of my layouts, I'll be able to come in here, drag and drop that pre-built section over here, not have to rebuild it from scratch, which is an amazing admin feature, and so happy to see that that was a part of this release. You can reorder the section simply by picking it up and drag and dropping the section into the order that you want. Here's where we start to think about making this meaningful, in that what is the information that is going to be most prevalent or that the team is going to use the most on a day-to-day basis. Timeline, we want them to log there. We know we want them to manage their CTAs. Scorecard influences everything they do. Those are probably some of your top 3 tabs. And then you can start to add in different sections that are going to be relevant for the team. Since this is a pre-built out-of-the-box layout, this is all here for me. If it wasn't, then this would be blank, and I would just start to drag and drop sections in. If I want to edit this summary, which is a lot of what we talked about with balance and design and what's going to be the information we want to have here, this opens up the canvas, and the canvas is where we drag and drop widgets to be placed onto that summary layout. You have over here on the left-hand side, standard widgets. These are out-of-the-box widgets that Gainsight has created for you that you simply can drag and drop. If you have data sourced to that object, your data will already be populated, which is again another wonderful admin feature. You have field-based widgets. This is really nice because if there is a key date or a key data point that you want to see widgetized into this summary, you simply can search for a date field. I'm going to use specifically a date field. And let's say I want to pull in the gone live date. I drag and drop that over, and that is now going to become a widget. And to move these around, you simply drag and drop and place them where you want. This is where the concept of visual design and keeping this balance and organizing the layout is really going to come into play, and something probably go back to the content we shared today when you get ready to do this. The other types of widgets that you have, so we have the standard, we have field. You also could pull in a report, and anything that is a report that has been built off of one of these, you could pull those in and have that be a widget on the summary page as well. A few things I want to point out here. So attributes, we can pull in lots of different attributes and have lots of different fields here. We want to make sure we're making it meaningful and kind of grouping these together by types of attributes that we have. And I want to call this out that if we want to add more fields here, we come up to the gear icon for attributes, and I'd have a list of all of my company fields. And if I want to search for a field, I'm going to search for date again. And let's say I actually want to add in the NPS last updated and the original contract date. I would check those, click save, and those will get added into this attributes report. The other important thing to note is that we also can identify which fields should be editable or non-editable. And you'll should have seen that there was a gear there, or might have seen that there was a gear there. I clicked on that gear next to the field. This allows me to say, should the team be able to edit this or not? This is where the concept or the conversation around data governance comes into play. If it is a field that the team needs to manage within Gainsight, they're responsible for it, they're accountable for keeping it up to date, we want to make sure that it's editable. If it is they just need to be informed of this data point, they do not need to edit or manage, then we would keep it as non-editable. So important to go through all of the fields that you have to identify which field should be editable versus non-editable. For any widget, if you no longer want it in the page, you have the trash can icon. So as you're working around, you'll be able to turn that off or check that so that you can take that off or drag in something else. Coming up to the top, I know you are all very excited for this customer journey map, as am I. Another area we probably could do an entire webinar on. I'm clicking the gear icon. Once I drag and drop the customer journey standard widget into my canvas, I'm going to come up to the gear icon, and I want to talk through a couple of the different ways you can source milestones on that customer journey map. You have three sources. One, we have automatic milestones. Think of these as out-of-the-box milestones you can turn on. We have manual milestones. Those would be milestones that you've created based on your framework and customer journey, and you've created that milestone in milestone admin and are probably tracking that as a milestone within timeline. And then we have key dates. I'm going to start with key dates and just dig into each of these three sources a little bit further. For key dates, this is going to look at date fields that you have in your company table, and then you are able to choose up to 3 date fields that you want to see in that customer journey map. In this example, I have the gone live date, the renewal date, and the original contract date. So every customer who has those dates, that date will be flagged on the customer journey map. Manual milestones are again where you can go in, you could create your own types of milestones, log those to timeline, either automatically via the rules engine or manually, and you can create the different types of them here. You could check as many as you want, but I would encourage you to think about the strategy that you have and the most important things that you want to see on that page, because if you add too much, you do not want information overload. You want it to be meaningful for the flags that they're seeing. And then automatic milestones. You can turn on these as well. These are out of the box milestones based on data changing within the system. So if you want to see or flag if there was an ARR change, a health score change, a stage change, you can move those to active and have those flag as well. Lots of options here. So really thinking through these milestones, you want to think about what's going to be meaningful for your build and for your team and how you would go about setting these up based on your customer journey. Now, you'll see there's a link here for Milestone Admin where you will go to manage. Maybe there are some new manual milestones you want to add. You're going to do that in the timeline admin area. I just have a second tab open here in milestone type, and you'll be able to configure these at the global company or relationship level, both the milestone types as well as those automatic milestones, turning those to active or adding new ones and making sure that they're active. This is where you manage that. I won't go into that much more detail besides it really is important for you to be aware that that's from an admin perspective where you'll figure out your strategy for milestones versus what you're going to see in this page. Just because you have a milestone up and running doesn't necessarily mean it's going to automatically show up in that customer journey map. Another new feature that I want to call out is tags. So I pulled in this tags field down here, and tags is the ability to customize a list of tags that you would want to have the team start adding to an account. And if you added this and didn't do anything, you would see there's nothing in a drop-down list. Because Gainsight is giving you the ability to tie a multi-pick list field to this tags field to create tags that are going to be meaningful for you and your team. And so if you do want to use tags, where you would go to set that up is data management and drop downs. There is a tags drop down here. I went in and created a list, and my thought process behind this build was maybe I want the team to start tracking the different features or functionalities or ROI points that the customer is tied to. And our top 3 ROI points are data integration, scaling, and analytics. So with this, the team can then go and start to add those tags. Of course, that becomes a data point that you'd be able to report on across your company records. So this is very customizable to you as an organization. There's no out of the box values. But I think there's lots of use cases here. The one that I'm noting here could be something around your advocacy program or your community program that you want to start tracking some attributes or tags that are related to advocacy. Going back into our layout, I want to make sure we have time for everything that we have. So I'm going to save this and go back into our layout. I also want to show a couple things with attributes and reports. One, we probably do not want this to be named attributes. We want this to be named something more meaningful. So if this is something more like CS metrics, I simply will click into here and update the name. Clicking on the gear icon to be able to organize my fields. Another new release here, or something new in the release, is the ability to group together all of these fields. So I have different groups and have organized my content so that it's chunked together in these are the basic details of the account. These are our core CS metrics. Maybe you have another one that's around usage data points. I also will call out you have the ability to en masse identify which fields you want to edit, which to me is a game changer for managing fields that should be editable and not editable. So you can go through and check the things that you want to be editable in this area. Same thing for reports in that we really want this to be more meaningful. So if this is going to be usage metrics or usage data, I want to rename that. And with this gear icon, just as we saw before, I can group together the information, drag and drop reports into here, maybe grouping them for different types of reports or different types of usage data points. Lots of flexibility and customization. If we go out to our C360, Grace had showed this, and I'm going to do an example here by clicking on the preview. The preview is going to allow you to choose a customer and look at what is my design going to look like for a customer that's in our instance now. So this will allow you to say, okay, this looks balanced, and I can see the flag is there, and our NPS is populating, and this makes sense for the fact that we want them to manage CTAs and take action on red health score and be able to know when they originally started. That story is supported by what I see here. So previewing is actually available in lots of different areas. As you're building, you can preview, come back to it, preview, come back to it to make sure it's looking the way that you want it to. Managing assignments. So this is another nice admin feature where I can look at a certain record and I can see what type of layout is being used for a user. So maybe I want to look at Harshi's management and the user Kate Griffin and say, okay, this CSM layout is being used for this company record. As an admin, you may get these questions of one record looks different from the other and I don't know why. This would allow you to come in to say, oh, it's because they're on two different layouts, because you'll be able to search by company and user to see those different layouts. If you need or you want to create a layout that is going to be specific to a certain type of account, one, you always can mark a layout as a default. That means if there's no assigned layout, everyone's going to get that one if they don't align to a specific assignment. But if you want to assign a layout, you'll be able to come in and identify a field from company. In this example, I have segment equals enterprise, which means if a company is identified as an enterprise segment or in the enterprise segment, it's going to get this layout. You also have the ability to do this for user. So I can go to user, I could maybe choose something like the license type and choose a layout just for a certain license type. You can have multiple assignment criterias and you do have the advanced logic for it. All right, that is the end of our demo, which I know was so many wonderful things, lots of things I hope that you're excited about. I am going to bring us back into our deck. And reason why we wanted to, have these office hours is because we knew there was going to be a lot of questions and a lot that you all have unique questions or use cases for. The best way we can support that is by offering these 2 1-hour office hour sessions. So we have office hours, as Grace noted, on Tuesday, February 7th at 12 p.m. Eastern, and then again on Thursday, February 9th at 12 p.m. Eastern. Grace, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the resources and next steps they'll get at the end of the webinar today?
Absolutely. Thank you, Kate. So I put in the chat, you guys, the link for registering. If for some reason you can't click on that, don't panic. We're going to provide that to you as well after the webinar. Please, before you leave, if you want to, there is a worksheet or a handout that's listed here in GoToWebinar that you're allowed to download. That will also have these links in it and links to our resources from the presentation. And we always want feedback, right? We want to always continuously get better and hear how you, what you thought of the webinar, what you learned, what were some of your key takeaways. So when we close out the webinar itself in about 30 seconds, you're going to get that, and then you'll also get it in an email afterwards. So thank you so much for your time and popping in to spend this hour with us, and we hopefully will see everyone next week.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.